Welcome to Love DoOver, where every story is a journey through heartbreak, healing, and rediscovery. In this story, she loved the life she had. She just never left room for love. We dive deep into the raw human emotions that make love both beautiful and devastating. Before we begin, remember this. If you've ever loved and lost or thought you'll never find love again, this story is for you. Subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss a new tale of heartbreak and rebirth. Jennifer Parker had never understood why people spoke about Mondays as though they were something to survive. She liked Mondays. By 7 o'clock that morning, a mug of coffee warmed her hands as she stood near the kitchen window of her apartment in Santa Barbara. The neighborhood was still waking up. A man walked his golden retriever across the street, someone watered flowers on a balcony nearby, and the bakery around the corner had already filled the air with the smell of fresh bread. She took one last sip, rinsed the mug, grabbed her bag and headed out. The drive to work followed the coastline for part of the way, and she never got tired of it. Some mornings the ocean was calm enough to look like polished glass. Other mornings surfers were already waiting for waves before most people had even finished breakfast. She rolled down her window for a minute and smiled. "This never gets old," she said to herself. By 8:30, she was at the marketing agency where she'd worked for nearly 6 years. "Morning, Jennifer," called Luis from across the office. "Morning." He pointed toward the break room. "Someone brought donuts." She laughed. "You're making that sound like company news." "It is company news." She shook her head. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." The office wasn't loud or chaotic. People worked hard, but they also knew when to joke with each other. Jennifer liked that. She enjoyed brainstorming ideas, solving problems with her team, and watching a campaign finally come together after weeks of work. Around lunchtime, her co-worker Harriet leaned over the divider between their desks. "A few of us are trying that new Thai place after work." Jennifer looked up from her computer. "Tonight?" "Yeah." Jennifer smiled apologetically. "I think I'm going to pass." Harriet grinned. "Book?" Jennifer laughed. "How do you always know? You've turned reading into a personality trait." "I don't think that's a bad thing." "It isn't," Harriet admitted. "Just don't let fictional detectives become your only friends." Jennifer pointed a pen at her. "They solve crimes. They're dependable." Harriet walked away laughing. When work ended that afternoon, Jennifer didn't feel like she was missing out. She genuinely looked forward to going home. On the way back, she stopped at a small independent bookstore she visited every few weeks. The owner looked up from behind the register. "Jennifer, your mystery section has been calling your name." "I was hoping you'd say that." He handed her a newly released novel. "It came in yesterday." She read the back cover, smiled, and carried it to the counter. "You always know what I'll like." "I've had lots of practice." Back at her apartment, she changed into comfortable clothes, tied her hair back and put on soft music while she cooked a simple lemon herb chicken with roasted vegetables. It wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. Later that evening, she settled onto the couch with her new book, tucked a blanket over her legs, and completely lost track of time until her phone buzzed. Her friend, Helen. Jennifer answered with a smile. "Hey." "Busy solving imaginary murders? I'm only on chapter 3. "So, yes." Jennifer laughed. "What are you doing?" "Trying to convince Eden that extra hot sauce makes everything better. It absolutely does not. You've betrayed me." "I've chosen truth." Helen let out an exaggerated groan. "I'm hanging up. You'll call back." "I probably will." They talked for another 20 minutes about work, an upcoming hiking trip with their group of girlfriends, and a museum exhibit they wanted to see the following month. When the call ended, Jennifer looked around her quiet apartment. Everything felt peaceful. She liked that. She always had. A few days later, after work, she drove across town to visit her parents. Her mother had already started dinner before Jennifer even knocked. "I knew you'd forget to eat something decent," her mother said as she opened the door. Jennifer kissed her cheek. "I cooked 2 nights ago." Her father looked over from the dining table. "Was it edible?" "Of course. Are you sure?" Jennifer laughed and slipped into her chair. Dinner stretched longer than any of them expected. They talked about neighbors, work, books, and the family dog they'd owned years earlier. Her father somehow turned every story into a joke. As they finished dessert, he leaned back in his chair. "So," Jennifer smiled, "that usually means you're about to ask something. Any exciting news?" "There is." Both parents looked interested. Jennifer grinned. "I finally found the mystery novel everyone's been talking about." Her father chuckled. "I walked right into that one." Her mother smiled patiently. "I meant, anyone special?" Jennifer rested her elbows on the table. "Not yet. You still hope someday?" "I do." Her answer came as naturally as saying yes to another cup of coffee. No sigh, no awkward silence. Just a simple truth. Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm glad." "So am I," Jennifer replied. They didn't stay on the subject. Her father immediately began telling a story, and before long everyone was laughing again. On Sunday morning, 33-year-old Jennifer arrived at church a few minutes before the service began. She greeted the usher at the entrance, sang with everyone else, listened carefully to the sermon, jotted down a few notes, prayed quietly before the final song. When the service ended, the sanctuary quickly filled with conversation. Children darted between adults, laughing as they chased one another across the courtyard. Someone wheeled out large containers of coffee. Fresh pastries appeared on folding tables. Friends greeted each other with hugs. Several people lingered, talking as though they had nowhere else to be. Jennifer smiled at an older couple she recognized. They smiled back. She waved to another woman she often saw sitting 3 rows ahead. Then she adjusted the strap of her purse, walked through the parking lot, unlocked her car, and drove home. Just as she had every Sunday for years. She never thought twice about it. Jennifer expected the pastor's words to fade the same way most Sunday sermons eventually did. She usually carried 1 or 2 thoughts home with her, read over the notes later in the week, and found herself thinking about them again the following Sunday. This time was different, not because the message had been louder or longer. Just one sentence kept returning. "Sometimes we pray for open doors while walking past the ones God has already opened." She heard it again as she backed her car out of the church parking lot. By the time she reached her apartment, she was thinking about dinner instead. She changed into comfortable clothes, tied her hair into a loose ponytail, and made a bowl of vegetable soup with toasted sourdough. The rest of the evening unfolded exactly the way she liked. A chapter from her new mystery novel. A cup of chamomile tea. The windows open to let in the cool evening air. Before going to bed, she closed her book and reached for the lamp. The sentence came back. "Walking past the ones God has already opened." She frowned slightly. What does that even mean for me? There wasn't an answer waiting. She switched off the light and went to sleep. The next morning, work settled into its usual rhythm. A client meeting filled most of the morning, followed by edits to a campaign Jennifer had been working on for several weeks. Near lunch, Harriet walked into her office carrying 2 sandwiches. "I guessed you forgot to order." Jennifer looked up from her computer. "I actually did." "I deserve thanks. You deserve half my cookie," Harriet smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." They ate together while talking about a television series Harriet had been trying to convince Jennifer to watch. "You've read 6 books this month." It was 5. "You counted." "I always count." Harriet laughed. "You could watch 1 season." "I could." "You won't." Jennifer smiled. "I probably won't." Neither of them tried to change the other's mind. That was one of the reasons they got along so well. Later that afternoon, Jennifer drove home with the radio playing softly in the background. Traffic slowed near the waterfront, giving her a clear view of the ocean. She found herself repeating the pastor's words again, not aloud this time, just quietly. She wondered if everyone else had forgotten them already. By the time she reached her apartment, she had moved on to deciding whether she felt like cooking or making a sandwich. Life continued as it always had. On Wednesday evening, Helen called while Jennifer was folding laundry. "What are you doing?" "Guess." "You've either got a book in your hand or you're reorganizing something." Jennifer smiled. "Laundry." "I wasn't even close. You'll get another chance next week." Helen laughed. "So, Saturday. Beach or hiking?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "Hiking." "I'll tell Eden." Perfect. There was a short pause before Helen spoke again. How's your week? Good. Anything interesting happen? Jennifer leaned against the sofa. She almost mentioned the sermon. Instead, she shrugged to herself. Not really. Just work. They spent another 15 minutes talking about a co-worker. Helen was convinced had developed a serious relationship with the office coffee machine because he was always standing beside it. When the call ended, Jennifer smiled. Helen could find something funny in almost any ordinary day. Several days passed. Saturday arrived with bright sunshine and a cool breeze rolling in from the ocean. Jennifer met Helen, Eden, and Miranda at a trailhead overlooking the coast. The conversation jumped from one topic to another as they walked. Books, travel, a restaurant that had recently opened downtown. Halfway through the hike, Eden looked over at Jennifer. So, did your parents ask again? Jennifer laughed. They did. And I gave the same answer. Helen smiled. Not yet? Jennifer nodded. Not yet. Miranda adjusted the strap of her backpack. I like that answer. Jennifer looked at her. You do? It leaves room for hope, without acting like your life is on hold. Jennifer smiled. I've never thought of it that way. You don't need to, you already live that way. The conversation moved on before Jennifer could say anything else. That evening she returned home pleasantly tired. She showered, made herself a simple dinner, and settled into her favorite corner of the couch. The book rested open on her lap, but after reading the same page twice, she realized her thoughts had wandered again. Sometimes we pray for open doors. She closed the book. Why does that sentence keep following me? Nothing in her life felt closed. She loved her work. She loved her friends. She loved visiting her parents. She loved coming home. There wasn't some empty space she was trying to fill, yet the words refused to disappear. Sunday arrived sooner than expected. The service ended. People stood. Conversations began almost immediately. Children hurried toward the courtyard where trays of cookies and coffee were already waiting. Jennifer picked up her purse. She took 2 steps toward the exit. Then she slowed. Across the courtyard, a group of older women laughed together over paper cups of coffee. Near the fellowship hall, several volunteers were arranging tables for something happening later that afternoon. A young couple stood talking with an elderly man whose face Jennifer recognized, but whose name she had never learned. She had seen all of them before, many times. She simply always kept walking. Her hand remained on the strap of her purse. The pastor's words quietly returned. Sometimes we pray for open doors while walking past the ones God has already opened. Jennifer looked toward the parking lot, then back toward the courtyard. A small smile crossed her face. What if I stayed? She let the thought settle. Just 1 hour. That was all. 1 hour. Then she turned away from the parking lot and walked toward the coffee instead. Jennifer stood beside the coffee table, holding a paper cup she wasn't sure she wanted. People moved around her as though they had done this every Sunday for years. Some gathered in small circles. Others introduced visiting families to long-time members. Children hurried past carrying cookies that looked much too big for their hands. For a moment, Jennifer wondered if she'd made a mistake. No one had asked her to stay. No one even knew she'd made a different decision that morning. She glanced toward the parking lot. Her car was still where she'd left it. She could quietly slip away, and no one would think twice about it. She took a small sip of coffee instead. It's a little stronger than usual. Jennifer turned. An older woman with silver hair smiled at her. I always think someone accidentally adds an extra scoop. Jennifer laughed. I was wondering if it was just me. Oh, it's never just you. The woman held out her hand. I'm Lucy. Jennifer. Lucy nodded thoughtfully. I've seen you here for years. Jennifer smiled. I've seen you too. And here we are finally introducing ourselves. I guess we're a little late. Lucy chuckled. Better late than never. They talked for several minutes about books, Santa Barbara weather, and the community garden the church helped maintain every spring. The conversation wasn't remarkable. It was simply pleasant. When someone called Lucy's name from across the courtyard, she touched Jennifer's arm. I'm glad you stayed. So am I. Jennifer surprised herself by meaning it. A few minutes later, she noticed a younger couple trying to carry two large boxes toward one of the classrooms. Before she had time to think about it, she set down her coffee. "Can I help?" The woman smiled with relief. "Would you? These are heavier than they looked." Jennifer picked up one of the boxes. "What did you put in here?" "Craft supplies for the children's program." "They must be very creative children." "They absolutely are." After dropping off the box, Jennifer exchanged names with both of them before wandering back outside. She stayed nearly an hour. Nothing unexpected happened. No life-changing conversation, no unforgettable moment, just several ordinary ones. When she finally drove home, she smiled to herself. Well, that was different. The following week settled comfortably into its usual rhythm. Work kept her busy without feeling overwhelming. One evening she visited her parents after work, where her mother insisted Jennifer take home leftover lasagna because, as she put it, it tastes even better the second day. Her father pointed toward the container. "Your mother says that every time." "Because it's true." He looked at Jennifer. "It is." Jennifer laughed. "I wasn't planning to argue." By Friday evening she was back on her couch with another novel, but she found herself wondering whether Lucy would be at church on Sunday. The thought caught her off guard, not because she expected anything to happen. She had simply enjoyed the conversation. Sunday arrived. After the closing prayer, Jennifer didn't hesitate this time. She walked toward the courtyard almost without thinking. Lucy spotted her before she had even reached the coffee table. "There you are," Jennifer smiled. "I made it back. I was hoping you would." As they talked, another woman joined them. "I'm Piper." Then another. "I'm Sophia." Within 15 minutes, Jennifer had learned more names than she had during the previous 3 years. Someone remembered that Jennifer worked in marketing. Someone else recommended a local bakery she'd never tried. An older gentleman asked whether she'd read the latest mystery novel by his favorite author. "I finished it last week," Jennifer said. He looked delighted. "Finally, someone else who appreciates a good ending." She laughed. "I've found my people." "You certainly have," Lucy replied. Later, Jennifer looked around the courtyard. Many of these faces had been familiar for years. She had sat beside some of them almost every Sunday. She'd smiled politely, then gone home. It felt strange realizing how many stories had been quietly surrounding her all along. As she headed to her car that afternoon, she found herself looking forward to next Sunday. Not in an excited way, simply with quiet anticipation. Several more days passed. The following Sunday, Jennifer lingered again after the service. She had barely finished pouring herself a cup of coffee when a woman wearing a volunteer name badge approached. "Hi, Jennifer." Jennifer blinked. "You remember my name." "We've been hoping you'd join us one of these Sundays." Jennifer smiled. "I'm getting better at staying." The woman laughed. "I'm Esther. We could use an extra pair of hands if you have an hour." "What are you working on?" "We're setting up the fellowship hall. There's a community dinner tonight." Jennifer glanced toward the large hall beside the courtyard. "I'd be happy to help." "Wonderful. Come with me." Inside, several volunteers were unfolding chairs, arranging tables, and carrying boxes from a storage room. No one seemed rushed. People worked while talking about recipes, grandchildren, baseball scores, and vacation plans. Jennifer picked up a stack of tablecloths. "Where would you like these?" Esther pointed toward the far end of the room. "Those tables over there." Jennifer had just finished spreading the first tablecloth when the side door opened. A man stepped inside carrying 2 folded tables, one balanced carefully against each shoulder. He paused in the middle of the room and looked around. Jennifer nodded toward the opposite wall. "I think those go over there." He shifted the weight slightly and smiled. "I was hoping someone knew," she laughed. "I've only been helping for 5 minutes, so if they end up in the wrong place, we're both taking the blame." "No worries." He carried the tables across the room and leaned them against the wall. Esther walked over. "Benson, thanks for grabbing those." "No problem," she turned to Jennifer. "Jennifer, this is Benson. Benson, Jennifer." "Nice to meet you," Benson said. "You too." He looked at the neatly arranged tablecloth. "You've done more in 5 minutes than I usually manage in 20. Jennifer smiled. "I had good instructions. I usually skip that part." Esther shook her head. "Don't encourage him." I wasn't planning to. Benson placed a hand over his heart. I've already been outnumbered. Jennifer laughed again before picking up another tablecloth. The conversation ended as naturally as it had begun. Benson walked off to help someone else move chairs, while Jennifer continued setting tables with Esther. Nothing about the afternoon felt unusual. People worked, they talked. Someone turned on quiet music in the background. Another volunteer appeared with a tray of fresh cookies from the church kitchen. When everything was finished, Jennifer stepped back and looked around the room. It wasn't the decorated tables or the neatly arranged chairs that stayed with her. It was something much simpler. Only 3 Sundays earlier, she would have been home by now, probably reading another chapter of her book. Instead, she was standing among people whose names she was finally beginning to learn, holding an empty cookie plate, while someone asked if she could help put out the pitchers of lemonade. Jennifer smiled. Of course. And without giving it much thought, she carried the pitchers to the serving table, already wondering what next Sunday might bring. The following Monday, Jennifer found herself smiling when she unpacked her lunch at work. Harriet looked over the top of her computer screen. You've smiled at absolutely nothing twice this morning. Jennifer looked up. Have I? You have. I was thinking. That's usually how it starts. Jennifer laughed. I stayed after church again yesterday. Harriet leaned back in her chair. Still enjoying it? I really am. What have you been doing? Talking. Harriet blinked. That's it. Jennifer nodded. That's it? Harriet smiled. Turns out talking to people is underrated. I think I've been missing more than I realized. She didn't say anything else, and Harriet didn't press her. They moved on to work, but Jennifer carried the thought with her through the rest of the day. She hadn't changed her life. She still came home after work and enjoyed the quiet of her apartment. She still looked forward to evenings with a book or trying a new recipe she'd bookmarked earlier in the week. The difference was only 1 hour every Sunday. Yet somehow that hour stayed with her long after it ended. Several days passed. Sunday arrived with bright blue skies and a light breeze coming in from the ocean. As soon as the service ended, Jennifer found herself walking toward the fellowship hall without stopping to think about it. Lucy waved the moment she saw her. There she is. Jennifer smiled. I was hoping you'd be here. Lucy laughed. I've reached the age where people are happy simply because I showed up. I wasn't talking about your age. I know, Lucy winked. I just like saying things that make people laugh. Jennifer shook her head. I can see that. Before long, Piper joined them carrying 3 cups of coffee. I guessed everyone would want one. Jennifer accepted a cup. Thank you. You're welcome. Esther has us helping sort donations this morning if you've got time. I do. Good. We've already volunteered you. Jennifer laughed. I appreciate being consulted. Inside one of the classrooms, folding tables had been covered with boxes of canned food, blankets, toiletries, and children's books, waiting to be organized for local families. People worked in pairs, chatting while they sorted everything into labeled bins. Jennifer found herself beside Sophia. Sophia picked up a stack of coloring books. My grandchildren would empty this box in 10 minutes, Jennifer smiled. Mine would still be deciding which one to choose. Sophia looked at her. You've got children? Jennifer laughed. No. I wondered why you answered so confidently. I was talking about imaginary children. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. They're usually the easiest kind. Both of them laughed before returning to their work. It wasn't the sort of conversation anyone would remember years later. Still, Jennifer drove home feeling lighter than she had expected. The following week slipped by quickly. One evening, Helen called while Jennifer was stirring a pot of tomato soup. Tell me you're not reading. I'm cooking. I almost got it right, Jennifer smiled. You were closer this time. So how's church coffee? Jennifer laughed. You make it sound like its own event. Isn't it? It kind of is. Helen waited. Jennifer realized she was smiling again. I've been helping with a few things after the service. You? What does that mean? It means the Jennifer I met would have smiled politely and disappeared before anyone found her. I wasn't disappearing. No, Helen said gently. You were just going home. Jennifer stirred the soup for another moment. I liked going home. I know you did. I still do. There was a brief silence. Then Helen said, "Sounds like you've found another place you enjoy being." Jennifer looked toward the window above the sink. "I think I have." The next Sunday, Esther was already arranging chairs when Jennifer walked into the fellowship hall. "I was hoping you'd come. I said I'd help." "You did." Jennifer picked up a stack of programs. "What needs doing?" Esther pointed toward several tables waiting to be arranged for a luncheon following a church meeting. As Jennifer began placing programs at each seat, someone walked through the doorway carrying a box filled with pitchers and serving trays. "Benson." He smiled when he recognized her. "Looks like we're on the same team again." "It seems that way." He set the box down. "I was told to bring these. Then you've completed your assignment." "I was hoping there'd be fewer instructions." Jennifer glanced around the room. "You said that last week." "I've learned nothing since then." "At least you're honest." "I try." For the next half hour they worked near each other without talking much. Sometimes one of them asked where something belonged. Sometimes one handed the other a stack of plates or another chair. The silence never felt uncomfortable. After they finished arranging the last table, Benson picked up one of the books lying on a nearby chair. "You reading this?" Jennifer nodded. "I started it yesterday." He turned the cover toward himself. "I read it a couple of years ago." "Did you like it?" "I stayed up much later than I meant to because I wanted to finish it." Jennifer smiled. "So that's a yes." "What about you?" "I'm trying not to read the last chapter early." "People actually do that?" "I've heard stories." "I don't think we can be friends with people like that." She laughed. "I agree." A few minutes later, they carried empty boxes back to the storage room. On the way, Benson nodded toward the windows overlooking the hills. "Do you hike?" "About once a month with friends." "Favorite trail?" Jennifer mentioned one overlooking the coastline. Benson smiled. "That's my favorite too. It has the best view. And the best excuse to stop halfway." "You stop because you're tired." "I stop because I tell myself I'm appreciating the scenery." Jennifer looked at him. "And are you?" "Sometimes," she laughed. "I'll accept that answer." As they walked back toward the fellowship hall, their conversation drifted to restaurants they liked around Santa Barbara, the farmers market downtown, and a local bakery Benson insisted made the best cinnamon rolls in the city. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "That's a confident statement." "I've done the research. I'll need evidence. I'll bring one next Sunday." She smiled. "I'll hold you to that." Esther walked over before either of them could say anything else. "You two finished hiding in the storage room?" Benson looked offended. "We were working." "I believe that." Jennifer smiled. "Barely." Esther laughed and handed them each another small task. By the time everything had been cleaned up, people were beginning to head home. Jennifer picked up her purse but didn't rush toward the parking lot. She stood outside for another few minutes, talking with Lucy, Piper, and Sophia, while children played tag across the lawn, and several families lingered under the shade of the trees. As she finally drove away, she realized something that made her smile all the way home. Only a month earlier, she had thought of church as something that ended when the final hymn was over. Now, without really planning it, she had begun looking forward to everything that came afterward, just as much as the service itself. Several weeks slipped by so naturally that Jennifer almost forgot there had been a time when she hurried to the parking lot the moment church ended. Now staying had become part of her Sunday, not an obligation, not a commitment she felt pressured to keep, simply something she looked forward to. One Sunday she spent nearly an hour talking with Lucy and Piper over coffee, while children raced across the courtyard with cookie crumbs on their shirts. Another Sunday she helped wipe down tables after a fellowship meal. The following week, she joined a group serving lunch to several elderly members who found it difficult to cook for themselves. She enjoyed every bit of it. What surprised her most was that none of it made her love her quiet evenings any less. She still looked forward to going home. She still loved reading with a blanket over her legs. She still enjoyed cooking dinner while music played softly in the background. Only now, when Sunday afternoon finally arrived, she no longer felt the need to leave the moment the service ended. It seemed there was always one more conversation worth having, One more person asking for a hand, one more story she'd never heard before. The next Friday evening, Jennifer met Helen, Eden, and Miranda at their favorite cafe after work. The waitress smiled as she set 4 menus on the table. "The usual booth." "You remembered us," Eden said. "You make ordering dessert look very convincing." Everyone laughed as they settled into their seats. After ordering, Helen leaned forward. "So," Jennifer smiled, "that usually means you're about to ask something." "It does." Helen folded her hands together. "How's church?" Jennifer reached for her glass of water. "Good." "That's all we're getting?" Jennifer laughed. "What do you want me to say?" Miranda smiled. "Well, every Sunday you've suddenly become unavailable until much later in the afternoon. I stay after the service now." "We've noticed." Eden tilted her head. "You've become one of those people who never leaves church." Jennifer laughed. "When you say it like that, it sounds like I moved in. We're just checking. I promise I still have an apartment." The table erupted in laughter. Helen smiled. "So what do you all do?" Jennifer thought for a moment. "It depends. That's not an answer. Sometimes we have coffee, sometimes we're helping set up something. Last Sunday we served lunch. Other weeks it's just conversations." Miranda looked genuinely curious. "And you enjoy it?" Jennifer nodded. "I never realized how much happened after the service." No one spoke for a second, then Eden smiled. "I like that." Jennifer looked at her. "Really? It sounds peaceful." "It is." She searched for another word but couldn't find one that fit better. Peaceful. That was exactly what it was. The conversation drifted toward vacation plans and books, but Jennifer caught herself smiling more than once during dinner. A month earlier, she probably would have spent most of the evening talking about work or the novel she was reading. Now she had stories about people. Lucy convincing everyone to take home leftover cookies because, according to her, calories don't count if they're from church. Piper trying to organize 3 conversations at once and somehow succeeding. Sophia remembering everyone's birthday without writing any of them down. Even Benson insisting a local bakery made the city's best cinnamon rolls. Life hadn't become bigger, it had simply become fuller. A few days later, Jennifer stopped by her parents' house after work. Her mother was trimming flowers she'd picked from the garden while Jennifer set the table for dinner. Her father walked in carrying a basket of fresh oranges from a neighbor's tree. "Our payment for helping fix a fence." Jennifer picked one up. "I like this payment system." "So do I." During dinner, they talked about work, the changing weather, and whether Jennifer's mother would ever convince her father to replace the old kitchen clock that had been running 5 minutes slow for years. "It still tells time," he insisted. "It tells the wrong time," his wife replied. "It's close." Jennifer smiled. "I think both of you have had this conversation before." "Many times," her mother said, "and I'm still winning." Her father laughed. "We'll let history decide." As dinner came to an end, her mother poured another cup of tea for Jennifer. "So how was church on Sunday?" Jennifer smiled without thinking. "It was really nice." "What happened?" "We helped serve lunch after the service." Her father looked up. "For everyone. For anyone who wanted to stay." Jennifer found herself telling them about a young family she'd met whose little boy insisted on carrying napkins to every table because he wanted an important job. She described Lucy trying to convince everyone to take home extra dessert. She laughed while repeating something Benson had said after dropping an entire stack of plastic cups and claiming he'd been testing gravity. Her parents listened quietly. When she finally paused, her father rested his cup on the table. "You've been talking about people." Jennifer looked at him. "I have." "You used to tell us about your routine." She thought about it. He was right. For years, her Sundays had sounded almost identical. Church, home, lunch, reading, preparing for Monday. Now each week seemed to carry different conversations, different faces, different memories. Her father smiled. "I'm glad you found another place that feels like home." Jennifer didn't answer right away. She didn't need to search for the right words. The answer was already there. "It does," she said quietly. "It really does." Later that evening, she drove back to her apartment with the windows slightly open. The familiar streets looked no different than they had a few months earlier. Her apartment still welcomed her with the same quiet she had always loved. She changed into comfortable clothes, made herself a cup of tea, and settled onto the couch with a book. Halfway through the chapter, she realized she wasn't reading. Her thoughts had wandered to the conversations from Sunday. Lucy asking about her week, Sophia promising to bring her favorite soup recipe, Piper recruiting volunteers for another community project, Benson trying unsuccessfully to convince everyone that cinnamon rolls counted as breakfast and dessert. Jennifer smiled to herself. She still loved coming home. That hadn't changed. But home was no longer the only place where she felt she belonged. And as she picked up her book again, she found herself wondering what everyone would be doing after church the coming Sunday. The weeks continued to unfold at an easy pace. Jennifer never made a schedule that said she and Benson should become friends. It simply happened. One Sunday, Esther announced that the church was partnering with a local environmental group for a beach cleanup the following Saturday. "We could use a few more volunteers," she said, as everyone finished putting away tables. Jennifer raised her hand. "I'll come." Across the room, Benson looked up. "So will I." Esther smiled. "I had a feeling both of you would say yes." The following Saturday morning, Jennifer arrived wearing old sneakers and a baseball cap she hadn't worn in years. Volunteers gathered near the shoreline collecting gloves, trash bags, and grabbers before spreading out along the beach. Jennifer had barely started when Benson walked over carrying an extra bucket. "I figured we'd probably end up in the same section. You planned ahead." "I've learned Esther likes assigning people before they can object." Jennifer laughed. "She's good at that." For the next 2 hours they worked side by side. Some conversations lasted only a minute. Others stretched across several hundred yards of shoreline. They talked about favorite places to watch the sunset, about the farmer's market Jennifer never missed during the summer, about Benson's habit of buying books faster than he could read them. Jennifer looked at him. "So you're one of those people." "I prefer the term optimistic reader." "How many unread books do you have?" He looked toward the ocean. "Do you want the honest answer?" "Now I definitely do." 23. Jennifer smiled. "I suddenly feel much better about my own bookshelf." When the cleanup ended, several volunteers suggested stopping at a taco restaurant a few blocks away. Jennifer almost declined out of habit. Then Benson looked at her. "You coming?" She smiled. "Sure." Lunch was loud in the best way. People traded stories, argued about the best salsa, and laughed when one volunteer accidentally ordered something much spicier than expected. Jennifer met several of Benson's friends from church. Joseph taught high school history. Duncan coached a youth soccer team. Violet volunteered at the local library. None of them treated Jennifer like someone new. By the time lunch ended, they were already asking if she'd be joining the next community project. "I think so," Jennifer replied. "We'll save you a seat," Violet said. Several days later, Jennifer and Benson found themselves sorting donated food at the church pantry. Boxes of canned vegetables, pasta, cereal, and peanut butter covered nearly every table. Benson picked up a can and frowned thoughtfully. "I've got a question." Jennifer looked over. "Okay. Who decided beans should be impossible to stack?" She glanced at the leaning tower he'd created. "I think that's a you problem." "I reject that conclusion." Before he finished speaking, another can rolled off the pile and landed on the floor. Jennifer folded her arms. "Would you like to reconsider your position?" He sighed. "I might." They both laughed before continuing their work. It was becoming easier to talk without searching for something to say. Silences came and went naturally. Sometimes they worked for several minutes before either of them spoke again. Neither felt the need to fill every quiet moment. The following weekend, Helen invited Jennifer to join their monthly hike. As they reached the trailhead, Jennifer spotted a familiar face. "Benson?" He turned around. "Well, this is unexpected." Miranda looked between them. "You two know each other?" Jennifer nodded. "We've been helping with church projects." Benson smiled. "I promise she does most of the work." Jennifer shook her head. "That's not true." "It's mostly true." Helen laughed. "I already like him." The six of them walked together for nearly 2 hours. The conversation shifted from hiking trails to favorite restaurants, books, childhood memories, and travel dreams. Jennifer quietly appreciated how easily Benson fit into the group. He listened as much as he talked. He asked questions. He laughed at himself when he accidentally took the wrong fork in the trail and confidently announced they were going the right way. "We're supposed to be over there," Miranda said, pointing in the opposite direction. Benson looked around. "I was testing everyone's sense of direction." "That's generous," Helen replied. By the end of the hike, Jennifer realized her friends were already treating him like someone they'd known much longer. A couple of weeks later, the church organized meal deliveries for several seniors who could no longer drive. Jennifer signed up immediately. When Esther handed out the assignments, she smiled. "You and Benson are taking this route." Jennifer looked over at him. "Looks like we're partners again. I'm beginning to think Esther has a system. I think she does." One of the delivery stops made Jennifer smile as soon as she read the address. "My parents live just around the corner." "Really? They're actually on today's list." When they arrived, Jennifer knocked on the front door. Her father answered with a surprised grin. "Well, this is a nice delivery." Her mother appeared from the kitchen. "And you brought help." Jennifer stepped aside. "This is Benson." Benson extended his hand. "It's nice to meet both of you." Her father shook it warmly. "We've heard your name." Jennifer looked at him. "You have?" Her mother smiled. "You've mentioned him a few times." Jennifer felt her cheeks warm. "I have not." "You have," her father said. "Not every conversation, just enough." Benson looked at Jennifer with a small smile, but wisely said nothing. Her mother invited them inside for a few minutes. As they talked over iced tea, Benson asked Jennifer's parents about the neighborhood, listened to stories about how long they'd lived there, and complimented her mother's lemon cookies after trying one. When it was time to leave, Jennifer's father walked them to the door. "It was good meeting you, Benson. The pleasure was mine." After they drove away, Jennifer glanced out the passenger window. "My parents liked you." "I hope so. They don't hand out compliments quickly." "I'll take that as encouraging." Later that evening, Jennifer returned home after another ordinary Monday at work. She changed into comfortable clothes, started preparing dinner, and reached automatically for her phone. She wanted to tell someone about Harriet's attempt to lead a brainstorming meeting while the office fire alarm was being tested every few minutes. She smiled. Without thinking, she'd already decided who she'd tell. She rested her phone on the kitchen counter for a moment. It surprised her, not because anything had changed overnight. Nothing had. There hadn't been a grand conversation or a moment that suddenly transformed their friendship. It had grown one Sunday, one project, one shared meal, one easy conversation at a time. As the soup simmered, Jennifer found herself smiling. "I was looking forward to telling him about my day." She stood quietly for a moment, letting the thought settle. Then she picked up her phone and sent a simple message. "Hope your Monday survived. I have a story that will make you laugh." A minute later, before she'd even set the phone back down, it buzzed. "Mine involved 30 cans of beans and one broken pantry shelf." "I think your story might actually be better," Jennifer laughed to herself. Dinner could wait another minute. Several more weeks passed, and Jennifer found herself smiling more often during ordinary moments. One Wednesday afternoon, Harriet walked past Jennifer's desk carrying a folder. "You've been looking at your phone every few minutes." Jennifer looked up. "Have I?" Harriet grinned. "You smiled at one message, then tried very hard not to smile at the next one." Jennifer shook her head. "I've become very predictable." "I didn't say that. You were thinking it." "I wasn't going to admit it." Jennifer laughed. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed again. "Benson, the church pantry officially has enough pasta to feed a small country." She smiled before typing back. "Jennifer, good. I was worried we'd run out." Harriet pretended to sigh. "That's definitely the smile I was talking about." Jennifer tucked her phone into her purse. "Back to work." "Yes, ma'am." The following Sunday, Jennifer and Benson stayed after church to help prepare food boxes for several local families. The work had become familiar. One person packed canned goods, another added bread. Someone checked each box before it was sealed. People talked while they worked, and laughter drifted across the room every few minutes. Jennifer looked over at Benson. I think we're getting faster. We are. I remember the first time we helped. I remember wondering where the tables were supposed to go, she smiled. You've improved. I've had excellent teachers. Lucy walked by carrying another stack of empty boxes. She looked from Jennifer to Benson before smiling. You two make a good team. Jennifer smiled politely. So we've been told. Lucy continued walking without another word. For some reason, Jennifer found herself thinking about that simple comment the rest of the afternoon. A few days later, Jennifer finished reading the mystery novel Benson had recommended. She closed the book, sat quietly for a moment, then reached for her phone almost without thinking. Finished it. She paused before sending another message. You were right about the ending. I never saw it coming. His reply came a few minutes later. I spent 2 days wanting to ask if you'd finished it, but I didn't want to ruin anything. Jennifer smiled. She realized she'd been looking forward to telling him, not because she needed someone to discuss the book with, because she wanted to share it with him. That thought stayed with her the rest of the evening. The next Saturday, several church volunteers gathered at a local park to prepare for a children's picnic. By early afternoon, the games had been packed away, the tables folded, and the last cooler loaded into a truck. Jennifer brushed the grass from her jeans. I think that's everything. I think so too, Benson said. People slowly headed toward the parking lot. As Jennifer picked up her bag, Benson looked toward the beach a short walk away. Would you mind walking with me for a little while? I'd like that. The afternoon was calm. A few children searched for shells near the shoreline, while couples strolled along the sand. Jennifer and Benson walked without rushing. Neither seemed to feel the need to fill every silence. After several minutes, Benson smiled. Can I ask you something? You usually do, he laughed. I suppose I do. His smile faded into something quieter. I've been thinking about us. Jennifer looked at him but didn't interrupt. When we met, I thought we were just going to be two people helping move tables. She laughed softly. That sounds about right. Then we kept serving together and talking. And somehow those conversations became part of my week. Jennifer nodded. They became part of mine too. Benson took a slow breath. I've tried to convince myself that this was enough. She waited. But it isn't. He stopped walking and turned toward her. I really love you, Jennifer. The words settled gently between them. I love the way you care about people. I love how peaceful your life is. I love that you can enjoy a quiet evening just as much as a busy one. I love praying with you, laughing with you, serving beside you. He smiled, looking just a little nervous. I don't want to keep calling this friendship when my heart has already moved beyond that. Jennifer felt her eyes begin to glisten. He reached for her hand. Would you be my girlfriend? She looked down at their hands for a moment before looking back at him. A smile slowly spread across her face. I was wondering if you were ever going to ask. He laughed with visible relief. I've rehearsed this conversation at least 20 times. How many versions? Too many. She laughed with him before giving his hand a gentle squeeze. Yes? His smile widened. I'd love to be your girlfriend. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The waves rolled onto the shore. A seagull landed nearby before quickly deciding to search somewhere else for food. Life continued around them, completely unaware that something beautiful had just begun. As they started walking again, Benson didn't let go of her hand. Jennifer realized she didn't want him to. That evening, after she returned home, everything looked exactly as it always had. Her favorite chair waited beside the bookshelf. The blanket was folded neatly across the couch. The apartment was quiet. She smiled as she changed into comfortable clothes and made herself a cup of tea. She still loved this life. She still loved peaceful evenings. She still loved reading until she lost track of time. None of that had changed. The only difference was that now, as she settled onto the couch with her book, she caught herself smiling at the thought that tomorrow she would probably tell Benson about the chapter she was about to read. Not because she needed someone to complete her happiness, but because somewhere along the way, she had discovered that the life she already loved had always been spacious enough to hold one more person. Several months passed, and Jennifer often caught herself smiling at how natural life felt. Being Benson's girlfriend didn't turn her world upside down. It quietly became part of the world she already loved. Some Friday evenings they tried new recipes together. Some Saturdays they wandered through the farmer's market before stopping for coffee. Other weekends they joined church friends for hikes or volunteered at community events. And every now and then, they spent an evening exactly the way Jennifer had always enjoyed spending it. Reading. One rainy Saturday, Benson sat at one end of her couch with a history book resting on his lap, while Jennifer disappeared into the latest mystery novel she'd borrowed from the bookstore. Nearly an hour passed before Benson looked up. "Can I ask you something?" Jennifer lowered her book. "Another question?" "I've built a reputation." "You have," he smiled. "Are we having a boring evening?" She looked around the apartment. 2 mugs of tea rested on the coffee table. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Books lay open in both their hands. Jennifer smiled. "I was just thinking this might be one of my favorite evenings we've had." His shoulders relaxed. "I was hoping you'd say that." She laughed. "I don't think everyone would understand us." "They don't have to." "No. They just have to find what feels like home to them." Jennifer reached over and squeezed his hand before picking up her book again. She realized something that made her smile. She hadn't fallen in love with someone who wanted to change her. She had fallen in love with someone who understood her. The following Wednesday, Jennifer stopped by her parents' house after work. Her mother opened the door with a smile. Benson couldn't make it. He had a late meeting. Her father looked up from the newspaper. "He's becoming part of the family already." Jennifer laughed. "I think so." As they finished dinner, her father leaned back in his chair. "You seem peaceful." Jennifer looked at him. "I've always been peaceful." He nodded. "You have." He smiled thoughtfully. "The only difference now is that someone gets to enjoy that peace with you." Jennifer carried those words home with her. A few weeks later, Benson invited Jennifer to meet him at the beach one Saturday evening after they finished helping with another church outreach. They walked along the shoreline they had come to know so well. The breeze carried the sound of the waves onto the sand. Benson slipped his hand into hers. "I've been thinking about something." Jennifer smiled. "Let's hear it." He stopped walking and turned toward her. "I still remember moving folding tables with you," she laughed. "You were looking for directions." "I definitely was. And I was probably trying to sound helpful." "You were," he smiled. "I thought I was volunteering for one afternoon." His expression softened. "I had no idea I was meeting the woman I would want beside me for the rest of my life." Jennifer felt her eyes fill. He reached into his jacket pocket and held out a small ring. "I love the life we've built together." He smiled. "I don't want a different one. I just want to keep building it with you." He took a quiet breath. "Jennifer, will you marry me?" She looked at him through happy tears. There wasn't a single doubt in her heart. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Then they stood together, smiling through a silence that didn't need words. It felt exactly like them. 3 months later, family, close friends, and the church community gathered inside the little church where their story had quietly begun. Helen and Eden wiped away tears before pretending they hadn't. Miranda smiled through the entire ceremony. Jennifer's father hugged Benson a little longer than anyone expected. Her mother whispered, "Welcome to the family," before hugging him again. Even Lucy smiled as she watched them exchange their vows. No one there could have guessed that everything had begun because one woman had decided to stay after church for just 1 extra hour. Several weeks later, Sunday morning arrived like so many before it. The service ended. Children hurried toward the courtyard. Coffee was poured. People gathered in little circles talking about their week. Benson looked at Jennifer. So? Heading home?" She smiled. "Eventually." She picked up a tray of empty coffee cups from one of the tables. "I'll help with these first." "I thought you might." Together they carried the cups into the church kitchen before joining conversations that seemed to grow naturally from one group to another. They laughed with Joseph about another failed attempt to organize the pantry shelves. They listened as Esther introduced them to a young couple who had just started attending the church. Lucy asked Jennifer if she'd be helping with next month's community dinner. "Wouldn't miss it," Jennifer said. An hour passed without either of them noticing. As they finally walked toward the parking lot, Jennifer looked back at the church entrance. She remembered all the Sundays she had smiled politely, walked straight to her car and driven home. There had been nothing wrong with those days. She had loved her quiet apartment. She had loved her books, her work, her parents, her friends, and the peaceful rhythm of her life. She hadn't been waiting for someone to rescue her. She had simply never realized that one small change in her routine could make room for someone who would become one of life's greatest gifts. She slipped her hand into Benson's as they reached the car. He smiled. "What are you thinking about?" Jennifer looked back at the church one last time before turning to him. "I'm thinking about one extra hour." He laughed softly. "That turned out to be a pretty good decision." She smiled. It was. Then they climbed into the car and drove home together, carrying with them the quiet truth that sometimes the life you love doesn't need to be replaced. Sometimes it simply needs a little room for something beautiful to walk in.